Hello, everyone. Looks like the clock is ticking and we are live. Just before we start, give me a few seconds. We will see if you are joining us, because I can see in the live chat. Today, I have back with me Mr. ANDREI Martyanov, who of course does not need introduction on my YouTube channel, because you know ANDREI very well. And you are following him, and if you don't, you have his YouTube channel already down below in the description box with a very mysterious name that we have already explained about almost 2 years ago. But that's another story.
Yeah.
Smoothie X12. But ANDREI is prolific author as well, and you can find his books and his blog also down below. The links have been attached. ANDREI, thank you so much for finding time again for my audience. I really appreciate it.
My privilege, Anya. Anytime.
So today, this live stream will shift into a little bit different direction probably, but I think some of you perhaps might appreciate it. I have some questions that I'm sure ANDREI can help me to get the answers for. But I want to start with playing two short videos. The first video will be with the man who is pretty well known to everyone who is following politics lately. And this is Thank You USA guy who, after Nord Stream pipeline, poof, exploded, Radosław Sikorski. Actually, Elon Musk called him Soros puppet, also very accurate. He is he was in Denmark, Bornholm, during Nordic-Baltic meetings with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So I'm going to play first him, because he's just to take him out of the subject. Then we're going to look into another person who is totally different, and that is Dmitry Medvedev, who is deputy chairman of the Security Council of the Russian Federation. And after those two videos, ANDREI, I will ask you my questions. So let's start with Sikorski, so we have him off the way, because he's just another schmuck.
And achieving a long and robust ceasefire. Now, speaking about the issue, the foreign ministers discussed some of their commitments to Ukraine, including aid packages, as well as some of the defense capabilities which will be needed to force Russia's hand to the negotiating table.
We see our role as securing the access lines into Ukraine, securing the railway and airfield hubs, so that others may fulfill that mission inside.
We also appreciate US's efforts in terms of making sure that maximum is done with regard to achieving long and lasting peace in Ukraine. Russia is an obstacle to that, so additional measures on Russia, pushing Russia with regard to really engaging both in the process, but also giving up its unreasonable demands.
But the commitment to robust and ongoing support for Ukraine is just one issue, whereas the need to eradicate Russian threat across Europe is growing more pronounced. This also includes the continued need to decouple from Russian energy sources, which was underlined by Poland's Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski when discussing the Nord Stream pipeline.
I think we should remember that every cubic meter of methane that comes to Europe from Russia will push out a cubic meter of methane that comes to us from the United States. And I think that should also be taken into account.
All right, so this was his idea here. Now let's go straight to the point, Dmitry Medvedev.
There is not a single country that, let's be honest, there is not a single country that strengthened its security as a result of joining NATO. Poland, the Baltic states, and more recently Finland and Sweden are good examples of this. The status of non-aligned countries gave them certain advantages due to their geopolitical position and many other factors. And now they are in a hostile bloc towards us. This means that they automatically became a target for our armed forces, including possible retaliatory strikes, possibly even nuclear, or preventive measures within the framework of the Russian military doctrine. They carefully learned the guideline of their predecessors. Unfortunately, to reformat this approach in the near future is unrealistic. The only thing that stops them is a threat of retaliation. Our possible response to their boasted principle of peace through strength. What is the answer, you may ask? But the answer is clear. Unfortunately, the answer is through the doctrine of peace through fear. The fear is still working, the rest is not.
На их хваленый принцип «мир через силу».
Andrei, here is my question. And I'm not sarcastic, I actually really mean it. How many Russian nukes will it take for the European, or I should say globalist, so-called leaders to calm down and to stop with this rhetoric about Russia? Do you think one Oreshnik will be enough?
Yeah, you don't have to have nukes actually to pacify Europe. The decapitating strike on the all those first, for example, you don't even need to decapitate, for example, Latvia or Estonia. You just have to move one company of the Russian motor rifle or the guys, and they will basically surrender. I mean, that's I'm not being facetious, absolutely. So no, it's you don't have to have a Oreshnik necessarily. You can do it with any kind of the long-range fires, ranging starting from the 1,000-kilometer Iskander, which is already there. You can use zircons, you can use kinjals, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. And decapitation, meaning the geographical coordinates of the bunkers or in Brussels and the headquarters of NATO are well known. There's nothing they can do to stop if Russia decides to really, off them. And yes, it could be done even without the use of nuclear weapons. But of course, Russians have weapon systems, including the nuclear ones, which, well, you know what, they are really good in terms of their what is called the implementation of the doctrine of the counter force. That means Russians will not go and blow the cities, for example, with the civilian population, as much as the civilian population could be hostile to Russians. But they will have enough the penetrating charges, which will go inside, deep under the ground, and explode if need be nuclear device. So, and yeah, it's I don't know how many precisely, but I think so that probably we'll look at the 100 multiple independent re-entry vehicles to pretty much stop European insanity. Well, but if Mr. Sikorsky and his psycho wife and Applebaum want and demand special attention, there is certainly could be deliberately and specifically designed for them the caliber 3M14 missile. So, and considering its accuracy, capabilities, it can fly perfectly into their personal address, into their window or the door if they want. It could be done. So, but then again, this is the family of the imbeciles, and they are just fanatics. I mean, basically they're feral animals, and what can I say?
But Andrei, they know about this precision. Sikorsky knows how accurate and precise those weapons are. They know it, right?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if Sikorsky knows it, because he's a cretin. He hated Russia so much and hates Russia so much, together with his wife, who is the famous falsifier and neocon princess, and Applebaum. So the guy is probably delusional in many respects, and he is kind of combination of the both desperation, fear, and in the same time hostility, because it's not Russophobia, make no mistake. Russophobia is the fear of Russia. His case, for example, is hatred of Russians. He went to even fight with the Mujahideen in, he was attacked.
I saw it.
Yeah, in Afghanistan. So that the guy is insane. So and but he also admitted that he is good at cocksucking. He made an admission that he did, what the blow job to Americans in his famous interview. You have to look it up. It's his direct quote, and he said, "Yeah, we are cocksuckers. We suck, American cock." And that's what who he is, cocksucker. That's what.
But when he said we, he meant Polish citizens?
Well, evidently he meant the whole Poland. I think he thinks about himself as a representative of the Polish population, which evidently he's not. But again, what can I say? The guy is insane, and as any type of the people who went and was dumbed down through this fraudulent degree mills in England, which is Oxford, Cambridge, all that, which they do not really educate them, they brainwash them. And as a result, you have these cretins, who run the show in Europe, and now they really soiling their underwear because they understood that, no, I mean, some of them really believe that Russians for some reason need them. I don't know what for, but I mean, they are obsessed with all kinds of the delusional things. And if he doesn't want to have Russian energy, that's fine with Russians, So you saw yourself what happened to Spain, and Portugal with their green agenda. Well, if Poland wants to follow in these steps, which evidently many of them do, so it's, Russians say, indulge us, So.
But Andrei, just to close on this first question, what can change that rhetoric, in your opinion? Does it have to go to some explosions, tragedy, using some nukes or weapons or other ways? Or is there anything that can change that rhetoric about Russia? Or do you think it will take number of generations that will have a different mindset?
Yeah, it's generational. You have to have a new generation of the politicians, such people like Magdalena Ogorek, for example, and people like Mike Krupa, who speak about this whole situation in such a way that represents their real statesmanship. But it's generational. And again, do not forget, Poland has been created after the collapse of the Soviet Union as the facade. It's just like, let's create this facade of like success of democracy and all that. Well, how it was created, Poland has been completely deindustrialized. There was a lot of pumping of their grants and loans, privilege loans, which are due to be paid off very soon, if not already. That was creating more or less, the standard of living and things like that to demonstrate to the rest of the Eurasia, like, look at this, that's what happens when you align ourselves, yourself with American, Pax Americana, essentially. This time is up. It's over, actually. And now they are beginning to really worry about the whole situation. But then again, Sikorsky is complete anomaly. He is not mentally a sound man. And when you look also at the number of the Polish politicians, for some reason, it's not Russophobes. Again, as I already stated, Russophobia is just merely fearing. You can address fear. But when you hate somebody, you cannot easily change it, if at all, and they are in the hate Russian gods in the extreme. And what can I say? I mean, it has to be generational, and it has to be people, common sense and moral and Polacks who work through, time after time after time, deliver the point of view. There are many Poles who are common sense, who see Russia not as an enemy, but probably first as a neighbor primarily, which it is. And obviously, in the end, as the possibly a cooperative, some kind of the cooperative relations and things of this nature. But this elite, this Schlachter, essentially, so of the fanatical haters. So it has to die out.
So we are actually going perfectly into the direction that I want to talk about. Since Poland will not be attending the parade in Moscow for the 80th anniversary of victory of World War II, I have a less than a minute long video. This video, and I think we have to talk about those things because many people don't know how many places looked like after World War II. They have an idea that many people died, but they don't understand the scale of the tragedy.
No.
And I found this video, Andrei. This video is a commercial, a kind of invitation to the museum that they created in Warsaw. This will be showing the way how Warsaw looked like right before the end of World War II. But this was created after the uprising in Warsaw in 1944 that actually British kind of created. Okay,
Yeah,
that's another
okay.
story. And they sacrificed
That's what British do.
so many people. Yes, and of course then they were blaming Russia for not coming to the rescue, but I'm not going to go there with this. I'm going to show people at least part of how destroyed the city was, because a lot of people nowadays, they don't remember it, Andrei. Like they don't understand how bad
Western
things
public
were.
is completely insulated from that. It was brainwashed. It doesn't even understand what they're dealing with. So.
And they are removing from the history books too.
Oh yeah,
So let me play
absolutely.
this very quick.
That's what British historians do, and American so-called historians do. They rewrite things. German historians.
So first, I want to say, because this will be written in Polish, so I want to say what it says. It says, on the 1st of September 1939, in Warsaw lived 1,300,000 people. And then the second text will be, on the 1st of September 1944, so right before the Warsaw Uprising, so we are still during World War II, there was 900,000 people living in Warsaw. And after that tragedy in 1944, hear this, in the ruins, there were less than 1,000 people. You know, when I see this, like I learned this, Andrei, but when I see those things, and now this anniversary is coming, I feel it. I literally feel the tragedy, the atrocity, the unnecessary sacrifice, right? All of this. And people have to look at it. They have to look at it and they have to remember, because they have to remember what war is. So let me play it, and then I will ask you my question about this. I know this video was not showing exactly, but this was authentic footage of what being completely destroyed. So, Andrei, how I really, you know, there are Polish people like myself, and I'm thinking, how is this even possible that we ended up where we ended up in this moment in time right now? Because comments, can I just tell you, I'm so sorry, I don't want to like cut you off, but there were comments under this video, Andrei. There were people posting that in 1953, so more than 10 years, so almost 10 years after the end of World War II, 25% of Warsaw was still completely destroyed. Like they were rebuilding and rebuilding and rebuilding. How can we be in this situation right now when Polish were fighting alongside with Russian army. And this is just tragedy for me, truly is, not to acknowledge all those people who have died.
Mhm. Well, it's a well-known fact, historical fact, that Polish government and Polish so-called new elites, they separated right Polacks, like say Sikorski's army, whose performance at the Monte Cassino, for example, in Italy in 1944 with the American and troops was, it was good, but make no mistake, those guys were not fighting the real war. That was the only thing when they really kind of, performed that well. A real Polish army, including Armia Krajowa, but especially Tadeusz Kościuszka, many people do not know. 300,000 Polish army was fighting in capturing Berlin in 1945 together with Red Army. But and of course they went from 1944 from the western borders into Germany and fought bravely and again. Четыре Panzerny and PS, you know what? It was Russians were joking, but everybody loved it. We grew up with this, how one single Polish tank won the World War II, but everybody loved it, because it was like streets were empty when this came out. So, and these are evidently for Polish government and for Polish so-called intellectual circles are wrong polls. They are incorrect polls. They are polls which are not representative of the Polish aspirations of, and what can I say? They want to ignore, while in reality, Polish troops had and have the full right to march with the Russian army on the 80s at the Red Square, because they were the ones who were the contingent, this among those 2.5 million troops which took part in the, and they were a significant part, took part in the liberation capturing of Berlin. Even famous, it's epic. The Киноэпопея освобождения, liberation epic movie, especially when you look, you will see Poles being present in this incredible movie. It's just the scale of it is just unbelievable. And especially Battle for Berlin, you will see yourself actually the Guzlik, Franciszek Pečka, who actually plays the Guzlik in 4 tankers and the dog. He is actually also there, and you can show the portraying of the Polish troops coordinating with the Red Army capturing Berlin. And this was in 1970. So evidently those polls do not fit the narrative. They are wrong polls. This huge, very important army has to be erased from the Polish memory, because their heroism, their dedication, it was wrong. It was for all wrong reasons. They cooperated with the Red Army, and we all know that, and you are correctly stated that, Poland was always British-leaning, and Britain used Poland as, and then United States, as Mr. Sikorski correctly stated. They used them for, blowjobs. And this is who they are. Those political elites in Poland today, they are cocksuckers. There's nothing more than that, and they have no memory. They have no humanity in them left. They don't have integrity. And because of that, they will not remember this gigantic Polish army, which fought bravely together with the Red Army, liberating Europe from what, and Russians correctly state now, the 80th anniversary in Europe is actually a sad day. You know why? Because it was unified Europe which was defeated, and Polish government will support anybody, terrorists, whatever. So the more they kill Russians, civilians, women, children, it's fine with them, so, and that's who they are. That's who Sikorski are. And then, of course, we're not going to be talking about those chihuahuas of the Baltic states. It's just pathetic. It's just not even funny, So there you go. Simple as that.
There was, thank you so much for this. There was, I would say, an awkward, actually truthful, but an awkward for the current rhetoric moment. Just a few months ago, when there there was a big event in Auschwitz.
80th liberation of Auschwitz, when this Polish Jew guy
yes.
came out and stated who were conducting the Ukrainians, Germans were annihilating, killing, beating their people. And he said, it was the Red Army which liberated me, and I will never forget it. And
right?
yeah,
You saw that
and
moment.
Buddha was sitting like somebody, pardon my friend, put their bucket of excrement on him. But yeah, they still rewriting it. Make no mistake, it's not only in Warsaw. London and partially Washington are great at rewriting history. They, in the end, listen, as I already stated, this famous meme with Russians putting their red flag over the chancellery in Berlin on the 2nd May of 1945 with the red banner, you have to, stars and stripes now, So yeah, who defeated Hitler? Oh yeah, London and Washington, just did all the job, So there you go. So that's where it is now, and they will continue to rewrite it. And as I already stated just prior to this, that those Polish soldiers who fought for essentially liberation of Europe and liberation of Poland, they will be erased from the memory, despite the fact that of the tomb of the unknown soldier in Warsaw, they will be talking about Monte Cassino, about D-Day. They will not talk about where the whole thing was happening, and it was the most brutal warfare in the history of humanity. And it was on the Eastern Front. And these were the Poles who, unlike Sikorsky people, who spent most of the time leisurely actually in Iran, these were the guys who fought bravely and sacrificed tremendously. And what can I say? I mean, I cannot do anything about it rather than write books. But again, when you look at people like Sikorsky, or you look at all kinds of the so-called historians from Great Britain, those people have no humanity in them. They are, they're liars. They're mentally inadequate, and their task is to rewrite everything. So they lie to themselves, and as such, they lose their humanity and integrity.
I'm so glad you saw that older gentleman who was a survivor from that camp. It's, imagine how this man feels right now.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, it will be, as Obama stated once, oh, my uncle liberated Auschwitz. And then say, oh, yeah, that tells you something. This is not a Freudian slip. It's how ignorant even Obama was about what was happening. And many people will erase. Yeah, they will try to erase that Red Army liberated Auschwitz. Russians haven't been invited to the celebration. And yeah, that's how it will continue. That's what it's going to be. In the end, it's going to be the United States and British who liberated the whole Europe, and they defeated Hitler at Stalingrad. That's where it is all going. And yeah, if Kursk battle, hey, General Patton won it, So that's what it's going to be. And simple as that.
But that image, I just want to, if you have guys time, please go and see it. Like, I understand the atrocity in Gaza, but this is, imagine Gaza, I don't know, size-wise, how much bigger, because that's how Warsaw looked like, and there was less than 900 people. Andrei, I didn't even remember that.
Yeah, that's how the whole Russia looked. So, yeah, Poland was destroyed utterly, and again, only again shysters, frauds like Anthony Beaver or some, they will say that when the Red Army was essentially at the full extent of its supply lines and exhausted after the British come in and let's do the Warsaw Uprising. Although Red Army, Stalin everybody was saying that don't do that. We don't have enough resource. We don't have enough force now to, but guess what? Then they blame it on the Red Army. So that's typical British attitude. That's what London does. It's lies. It lives lies, essentially. And so the more it goes, the more it's going to be rewritten and hidden. And, so what can I say?
And can I say, that's why I'm really glad when I'm talking to you. So now what they do, they put the statues of the little boy who is in a helmet, soldier helmet that is about 10 times bigger than he is. And they put the statue with this little boy in Warsaw who was forced to fight. You know, it breaks your heart, Andrei. Like, I know Warsaw, I actually study there. I have to tell you, there are streets that still have those, on the walls, they have the, like the memoriam of how many people Germany.
Yes, yeah, I know. We Russians, we know that. I mean, listen. Don't forget what Russians did to save Krakow from being exploded. It was one of the most outstanding special forces operation in history, because Krakow was already fully mined and destined to be blown up to smithereens by Germans, by Nazis. So Russians did their unthinkable. They sacrificed the whole contingent of the special forces, but they have been able to demine. Many of them were killed fighting Germans, but that's how the Krakow was prevented from being blown up, you know. But yeah, if you look attentively, look at Stalingrad, same thing. Sevastopol, all completely erased. Voronezh, it's just like, yeah. Those people, nothing to detract from the heroism of British people, you know, or British army, which of course has nothing to do with the policies per se, you know. But I mean, London is nowhere near to what was happening to Warsaw, to some Polish cities, let alone Stalingrad, Sevastopol, Voronezh, Rostov. It's just, they don't understand what they're looking at. Even though London was bombed and it was pretty bad, the only thing which they did was the Coventry. Of course, they killed 10,000 people in Coventry. Coventry was pretty much bombed into the, you know, but the rest of it was pretty much okay. They were here and there, you know. But when they look at the Eastern Front, they do not even understand the scale and destruction in what was happening. But as I already stated, in especially Anglo-Saxon and in Polish so-called history, Stalin will be equated to Hitler. They will continue to say that Stalin and Hitler, you know, did this. Obviously, ignoring all those good old British historians who had integrity and fortitude, and you know, to write, like Corelli Barnett and people of this kind of scale. No, they will rewrite it. They will rewrite it into, and eventually it will be comic books, you know, which they will be teaching in Oxford, and you know, so and in Sandhurst to these morons from the British military. So that's what it's going to be, and it's already going that direction. And revisionism, as they call it, it's not revisionism. It's a rewriting of everything. So, as I already stated, as crazy as it sounds, but eventually, who knows, somebody will write that, you know what, that were, you know, British and American armies which fought at Kursk and defeated, you know, Walter Model and Hoth and Manstein. You know, they will write it, you know, eventually, because it has to be rewritten. It's 1984, and especially in Europe, because Europeans are absolutely gullible. They are conformist for the most part. And yeah, it's much easier to brainwash them. And this is what is happening. We are living this moment. It's 1984. We have always been at war with the East Asia. That narratives change, and as much as we can, you know, protest this, nothing will change until people wake up. If they wake up, which, and you know my attitude, I don't hold much hope for Europe.
And this is what you just said, and you're taking me to my Stalin question perfectly, leading there. I have to say, Andrei, when you were talking and I was listening to, I just realized what it is. It takes, first of all, curiosity and really knowing what has been happening, and then it takes someone to actually have an interest and not to be ignorant, because when you are ignorant, like I see, there's so much ignorance in people nowadays. They don't care about anything, literally. Yeah. They don't have any interest. It's very consumption, very shallow, very instant gratification, no debt, no soul searching, no experiencing, being a human. Like there is more to humanity than just objects, right?
Anya,
You know?
we live, yeah, the West lives in the post-Christian, post-modernist society. Everything is for sale, and the tragedy of it that obviously many people do not understand that, but they can feel it. They cannot rationalize it because they are highly uneducated. We can see the dumbing down of population happening wholesale, but in Europe it's just absolutely altogether, it's just crazy. You know, you saw yourself what happened to Spain and Portugal. Those imbeciles just they killed their economies essentially. And it's not just because it's you cannot explain to people without base knowledge of basic physics, forget about it being a good electrical engineer or specialist in the grid, that what you're doing, you're committing suicide. People were telling them. But you know what? So how can I say it? Europe deserved it completely, honestly, you know. So they voted for this, and they will continue to vote for that. And that's the probably by 2050 we will not have France as a unified state. So they will be completely Islamized, and probably south of France, you know, Marseille and around, they will just simply, you know what, I mean, the police already is fearing or going to banlieues in Paris, for example. They have no power to change it, but they still voted Macron with the landslide on the second election. It's not like he won by teeny-weeny margin. He absolutely smashed Marine Le Pen.
To be honest with you, I think, of course, some still voted, and I think we talked about it before, but in my opinion, all of the elections are rigged.
Well, I mean, they're rigged, but
I believe, I think there was anyway, I think they fake it, and because she has, and I mean Le Pen, she has a lot of supporters. That's why they are doing.
What doesn't mean, Anya, it's like, I'll give you the simple mathematics. It doesn't matter if they rig it or not. For example, if you take a look at this, everybody like in Germany, you know, applauding and getting excited about AfD, Alternative for Germany, winning. So, you know, they won in Thuringia for some unknown reason. And of course, primarily they are supported in the East Germany, which is former GDR, German Democratic Republic. And everybody like, oh my God, they took like 25% of vote. Okay, but did anybody do any math? When you put together all those SPG, Christian Democratic Union, and everything, where the 75% are, they are still globalist. So no matter how you vote, majority of population will continue to vote for their destruction. And they will destroy them. Europe will live, it's already beginning to live poorer, and it will be really poor. And then eventually it will essentially become, well, some places are already like the third world. Many people still believe that London is a nice looking city. Well, the center maybe, yeah. The rest of it, there's slums, pardon my French, you know. And so the same goes for Paris. And they wanted it. What can I say? You cannot change those people. It's unless they go through the transformative experience, like Russians went through 1990s, when they paid a horrendous price for, well, partially to a large degree their own fault, but partially also the circumstances. But that was a transformative experience precisely because of this transformative experience, they have been able to save their country. Europe cannot do that because the countries are smaller. Even the largest of them, whatever, Germany, about 80 million people, they are economically, well, absolutely not what they try to portray them. And so when you go through this, you begin to understand. And guess what? Europeans will be back at it at what they have been for the last 1,000 years, even more. They will continue to kill each other because once the things dry up, like energy and things of this, unless population does a real serious U-turn on something, they will continue to, well, you saw, again, as I already stated, Spain and Portugal, they will continue to have this. They will continue to have those, and summer is coming when the demand, the consumption of energy will grow even more. Guess what? Welcome to the third world. Welcome to the dirty water. Welcome to the, distribution systems where you cannot go into the supermarket and buy what you want. Welcome to the agriculture dying. That's what they voted for. And then now they say that European Commission and they cannot change anything. Well, you know what, guys, in the end, we have to bear responsibility for our decisions, and there is a personal responsibility. Russians paid dearly in 1990s for their stupidity, for their incompetence in a sense. But guess what? After the 10 years, you see yourself today what Russia has become, and is becoming constantly every day. They learned. Europeans do not learn.
And this is where I want to take you now. As I mentioned to you before we started the live stream, I don't watch movies anymore. I don't go to the movie theater. Very, very rare that there is something I'm interested in. But when I was traveling, I was watching a movie on the plane. And this was a movie, and I will show you in a second a little bit from this, that really got my attention. And it was taking place in Russia and in UK, but in Russia during, it was during John Kennedy, United States, Khrushchev. Khrushchev was the leader of the party. And after watching this movie, I thought of you right away, because I thought next time when we connect, I really want to ask you some questions about certain things. So let me just play a little, because this gives people, let me just give an idea what it is. It's based on true story, but it's of course a Hollywood production. So keep in mind that some things might be a little bit twisted. However, a lot of truth has been covered in this. So let's play a little bit and then I ask you my question. Let me just mute myself first here.
Greville Wynne was a businessman whose job consisted of forging deals between different businesses. He would accomplish this by meeting high-up employees or owners of businesses and getting them to like him in order to form business relationships between their company and the ones that he represented. Oleg Penkovsky was a Soviet military intelligence colonel and a member of the Soviet Committee for Scientific Research. His position meant that he had access to high-level top-secret information on the ongoings of the Soviet government. The plan was simple. The 12th of August 1960, Penkovsky made contact with the CIA and MI6 by handing information over to some American students in order to let them know that he wished to share information with them about the ongoings within Soviet Russia. Once the CIA and MI6 were aware of Penkovsky as a credible source of confidential information, they contacted Greville Wynne in order to have him travel to Soviet Russia as a businessman to open up a gateway to Western industries for the Russians. He would travel between the two countries and bring back classified documents to give to the intelligence agencies. And so began one of the most important courier jobs in history. Over a series of trips between Russia and England, Wynne successfully managed to smuggle out many photographs of classified documents, which mainly pertained to the Soviets' nuclear missile program. Over the 2 years that they worked together, Wynne and Penkovsky developed a closer friendship, meeting each other's families. This friendship was explained to the Russians as being due to Wynne operating as a salesman of Western trade information to the Russians. He was selling them the Western secrets. This was something that he was told to do in order to keep up his cover story. His position allowed Penkovsky to get Wynne through customs without checks or searches, which allowed him to leave the country by plane without his briefcase being checked. which was fortunate given that he was leaving with folders filled with sensitive documents and pictures. After a while of leaking information to the West, a mole within one of the agencies passed information to the Soviets that the West was acquiring more information out of the Soviets that they should not have access to. This spurred on internal investigations by the KGB to try and find the leak of the information. The most important information that was successfully leaked to the West was that the Soviets were placing nukes in Cuba in order to be able to strike the mainland US. This started the Cuban Missile Crisis, which started a massive escalation that had the world closer to nuclear war than it had ever been.
To regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States.
The end of the Cuban Missile Crisis eventually led to a hotline being established between the White House and the Kremlin, which overall led to better relations between the two nations and eased tensions around the world. Before that, though, the KGB were getting closer to discovering the source that was leaking the information to the West. As Wynne came under more and more suspicion, as did Penkovsky. On the 28th of October 1962, a plan was undertaken by the CIA and Wynne in order to smuggle Penkovsky and his family out of Russia. Unfortunately, the plan was discovered by the KGB and failed, leading to both Wynne and Penkovsky being taken into custody. Throughout incarceration, both Penkovsky and Wynne maintained the story that Wynne had no idea what he was taking out of Russia. It took 18 months and the trade of a Russian spy in exchange for Wynne to finally be released from prison and sent back to the United Kingdom. Unfortunately, Penkovsky was not so lucky. He was executed for treason and never knew that the near 5,000 documents that he leaked to the West were responsible for the de-escalation of tensions between the West and Russia and possibly helped to prevent nuclear war. He was heralded as the most important Soviet source of information ever recruited by the West.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you so much for your patience watching this. Why I played this entire thing. I did a little research after that. I went into some documentaries and real things about that. Oleg Penkovsky and who he was and his father, etc. But my question is about this. So this is based on true story. It's a Hollywood production. And I believe I was meant to see this movie because I want to ask you this question. And it's a very genuine question. It's not sarcastic or anything. You know, I've been to Russia many times. You know my opinion about Russia. But apart from the monuments and the buildings, is there anything left of communism in Russia? Is there any reminiscence of it in the government of Russia? Are there still people in the Russian government who are guided by the communist ideology? And I'm asking this not because I'm trying to be provocative or anything. I really want to know, is there anything of that era that still lives in some people, in the mentality of people?
No, it's we have to start with the thing. By the way, even this piece which you played is completely garbage. First, we have to consider there's a BBC, and the only thing British have behind them is some blown out of proportion and self-aggrandizing mythology of MI6 and all that thing. Where Penkovsky did a lot of damage, but it had nothing to do with the de-escalation. When, of course, it was one of the Russian diplomats in New York from Mr. Troyanovsky, who was already, when this was unfolding, and my actually chief superintendent of my Naval Academy, of which I have been honored to study under for 5 years. So at that time, Captain Second Rank Arkhipov, who was the chief of staff of the 69th Brigade of the submarine from the Northern Fleet, which took part in the famous, hunt, and he was the guy who prevented the actually nuclear war. during my time, he became from Rear Admiral, the Vice Admiral, Superintendent of my Naval Academy. It's all garbage by British. I mean, they need to self-aggrandize themselves because they are a Chihuahua and pathetic nation, which now represents practically nothing. So they create myth about themselves. Mr. Trainovsky and CIA people and people from high position in the United States were already talking on the in bars during the and he was conveying hidden channel of the communication between Kremlin and White House. So how Penkovsky influenced, like, it allowed to de-escalate? No, it was the actually smart guy as JFK, as much as he was a pervert in many respects, but he was a smart guy. And again, there was a lot of people there, not just fanatics like Curtis LeMay, but there were a lot of people who were World War II veterans on the American side. British was it's a sideshow. Already then they were nobodies, So this whole thing, it was strictly between Russians and Americans, and how they turned down, those de-escalated, and so it's a long story. So anyhow, that's a typical fairy tale by British, is BBC or whatever the hell it is. So, but yeah, Penkovsky did a lot of damage, no doubt about it. So
right, that's Andrei. So he was able to steal he was taking photographs of the documents, and he was
he was one of the most damaging. Although, let me put it this way, I think that Mr. Golitsyn probably was even bigger than that. But then again, as I was, the only thing, for example, like British would have, United Kingdom as it exists today, the only thing they have is the stories which they have to come up with, which shows how important they are. They were not that important. Already by then, it was between Soviet Union and United States, two superpowers, so. But and I will have to go like in 5 minutes.
Yes, so let me ask you about that, because is there anything left of that mentality still in any politicians in Russia? Is there anything left of that?
Well, in Communist Party faction in Duma, they have that, but they are not in power. They have their niche representation. So, but you have to understand, that's why I started talking about it. The whole thing about communism, as they understand on the West, which was of course sold, which is garbage primarily, or not all of it, but they absolutely misunderstood what was going on. Many people didn't understand that, for example, already since the Stalin times, he dismantled what communism was perceived already in 1930s. Many people do not understand that very much of his so-called purchase were, except for the 1937, 38, when that's the whole other story, but they were about Trotskyists. Well, guess what the Trotskyists are? They are in the United States. Guess who they are now? They are neocons. And that is why they carry the hatred of Russia. And they settled in Europe and the United States. Many of them Jewish, others not. And so that's the real communists. While Stalin went completely into the what is called state capitalism, which would inevitably basically develop into something completely different, away from what was considered the classic communism and classic Marxism. And then it was Khrushchev, then Brezhnev, and eventually Khrushchev started screwing up the country so badly, so that eventually Soviet Union collapsed, also because it was a multicultural society, and you cannot civilize those soft underbellies of those stans, especially their Muslim population, which was to a large degree already by the 70s and 80s hostile to ethnic Russians. So the whole thing broke up. It took the moron Gorbachev and his bunch of the imbeciles who went with his government. But Soviet Union probably could have, endured for another probably 30, 40 years. But United States itself was on the verge at that time. United States got lucky in this respect because that's why they loved Gorbachev. And so there is no communism in a sense. It was created by Marxists, and it was completely modified already by Stalin. But now what Russians use is Russian economy centrally planned. You can bet you whatever you want, but it is. Essentially, that is why Russia wins the wars. But it is a free market economy. You can have the fusion economy. You can have the economy which is multi-layered. You can have the strategic resources run by the state, which is supposed to be. But you have been to Russia. It's all privately owned, retail, everything. So, it's a mixed economy.
I want to say that I like I said, it's just my ignorance or not knowing things, but this to me now looks like it's a projection. So those Trotskys went to the West, they became the neocons, and they are projecting now. So
no, because many of them are Jewish also. They also have the natural hatred of Russia. So, and that's what many people do not understand. The neocons are a very secular sect. They obviously exploit a bunch of the ignoramuses who are Christian Zionists, but they are not only about Israel. Some of them don't care about Israel either. But for them, it's to stick into Russians. And neoconservatism is basically, it's not even romantic. It's its ideology is similar to Nazism, but in a different way. They use all those verbiage, which confuses people, and it's not their fault because they talk about democracy. In reality, they are nothing more than genocidal maniacs. And if that could have been, up to them, they would kill most Russians and would, essentially realize Plan Ost by Nazi Germany, so basically depopulate Russia and have the access to the resources and whatever they wanted to do that. So Mr. Sikorsky, his wife, she's a fanatical, she's fanatic, okay? She's obviously not an academician. She writes all kind of garbage and trash, pretending to be the Russian history. She hates Russian gods, utterly. No, she's fanatic. So, and yeah, she's neocon. She's a classic neocon. And Mr. Sikorsky is classic neocon. So, and that's who they are. And if you go to you basically trace all the backgrounds of those fanatics in U.S. media, be them Max Booth or Julia Ioffe, they are all coming back to those so-called intellectuals of the Trotskyist movement, and they hate Stalin. You know why they hate Stalin? Because he purged them. He eventually killed Trotsky himself.
Andrei, I know we have 5 more minutes, please. Please, my last question. I really have to, because who I will ask if not you? Okay, let's clarify this. When people go and read this about Stalin, this was my question about Stalin. This is about Stalin, that how many people died under Stalin? I Google it because that's usually how people Google, right? Estimates vary, but it's generally accepted that millions of people died under Stalin's rule, with the most common estimate being around 20 million. This includes deaths from political executions, forced labor in the Gulag, and la la la. Okay, my question, Andrei, is this. Is this all bunch of lies? Are they manipulating the history facts? Can you tell us how many? I'm not asking the number, but many people died.
I know the numbers by Russian historians and archives, and that is the thing which actually, for people who read Gulag Archipelago, they have to understand. Well, first, apart from this unreadable garbage, but it's not documentary. It's fictional literature. They don't understand that. Well, the Solzhenitsyn being, well, it's a whole other story. But no, the number from 1922 of actual people who went through so-called Gulag, in reality penitentiary system, there are some bunch of the idiots who still believe that Gulag still exists. You cannot explain this to them, but because they're cretins, I'm not kidding you. They believe that people are still being sent to Gulag. Sadly, one of them, respectable by me military thinkers, Colonel Douglas MacGregor, refers to that. And when you look at those people who write this, but the point is, throughout 1922, through 1953, So 31 years, right? 3.8 million people went through the so-called Gulag system, very many of them being actual criminals, people who violated law, killed, raped, robbed. And between 680 to 720,000 people have been executed as for political reasons throughout 31 years. So altogether, 3.8 million, about slightly less than 800,000
Okay. We have 2 more minutes. So where did they got this 20 millions from?
Oh, no, they didn't get 20 millions. Mr. Solzhenitsyn says 60 million. And well, because we know it's American education and European education, they don't study mathematics. But the point is, yeah, that's what it is. It's all garbage. So guess who provided those numbers? Trotskyites and Solzhenitsyn, who actually took the numbers from Professor Kurganov, who was a Goebbels cooperated with Goebbels, and so
Okay.
he was from this. Kurganov's children, who lives in the United States, they built Solzhenitsyn Vermont. Solzhenitsyn is a classic CIA operational pinplans, and white immigration. White immigration played a critical role because they had this, because they had to settle the accounts with those damn Bolsheviks, and you know what? They invented those numbers that, you know what, Jewish commissars rape our women. Yeah, no, there was obviously civil war. It was a horrendous civil war, but it's civil war, you know, and so yeah, that's the number for Gulag. What can I say?
Oh my God.
The worst thing which could have happened to these cretins was the fact that, as strange as it sounds, that Gorbachev opened all archives. And that was the tragedy for them. Because suddenly those numbers, like, where are those 20 million? Well, Holodomor is a complete figment of imagination, because it was actually, Russia also was affected by Holodomor, as they call it. So it's all garbage. It's all, the only thing they are capable of, those people, especially those people from Harvard, you know, Oxford, who they can operate with the verbiage. They know how to write words. And so as such, they can do only PR and write history. They cannot run the country. They cannot develop economically, militarily, scientifically, because it requires real knowledge, real skills. What do? They have this cretins from CIA say, okay, let's stick it to Soviets. Let's invent this. And that is why the rest of the morons who think, oh yeah, Solzhenitsyn writing. Have you read Solzhenitsyn in Russian? It's freaking unreadable. It's garbage. And the same goes to Pasternak. They don't understand. Many people don't understand. They read this very average.
Pasternak, yeah? Boris Pasternak.
This mediocrity Dr. Zhivago, while in reality not understanding that Pasternak was an amazing poet. His contribution was in poetry. Dr. Zhivago is unreadable. It's like, oh, good Lord. I mean, it's oh gosh, it's molasses, you know, and on and on and on. This is a classic, you know what, middle-aged women and who, you know, housewives, like, oh my God, you know. So this is
Harlequin.
Sorry?
I like Harlequin story.
Yeah, so, and yeah, that's what it is. And most of those professors, they don't even know the actual Russian literature. They don't understand that Solzhenitsyn in Russia is viewed as, and say, oh, look at this. They opened the, monument to him. Well, he's considered by the majority of Russians a traitor. And it's basically, he was published primarily pushing through the USAID and all those grants, you know, to push it on Russians, this idea that because they needed to make Russians feel guilty. You know what? That is why this scumbag actually went and even started to smear the Great Patriotic War. As the result, Russians said, screw you, you know? So that's what it is. But that brings us back to the thing. It's not only that they are vile and menacing and bad people who do that. They don't even know how to lie properly and professionally. You know why? Because be that Sikorsky, Applebaum, any neocon, including their generals, they are morons. They are unprofessional cretins who do not understand real things. They don't understand real warfare. They don't understand history. And of course, they know nothing about Russia. They literally know nothing. They are all their so-called. The only guy who knew Russia, you know who he is? He's right now in Moscow. It is CIA analyst and briefer for the JFK and a legendary man, Ray McGovern. He's in Russia now, you know, for the 80s. So, but the rest of it, when you look at this, this is pathetic. It's a clown. And of course, considering the extremely low intellectual level of Western journalism, well, it's also low in Russia too, you know, make no mistake. Journalism as such is not a real professional. It's not craft. It's nothing. It's just so. But when you look at this, it's like, there you go. You know, so you wanted the result, you built your castles on the sand. And you didn't recognize that what is happening. That is why the West lost the war in Ukraine, because they are morons. They never knew what they're dealing with, despite the fact that I wrote 4 books warning them not to go there. Well, they went. Now they learned out. You know, famous FAFO. Do you know what FAFO means? I will substitute. It's F around, find out. You know, so that
okay. Yeah. I know.
So they did a full FAFO, and hey, I did my best, you know. So don't look at me. I did my best for all a second decade now. I warned them. You know nothing. Don't go there. Don't do that. So you have the cretins in Pentagon. They believe that they are better than Erich von Manstein or Walter Model. They're not even in the same league, and yet they decided to try. Well, they tried, all right.
Andrei, I have to say, well, first and foremost, thank you. Stay 4 minutes longer for me. Big time, thank you. I want to say this. This all needs debunking, because we have been fed like, and that's I think you have such a mission to talk about those things and share with people, because they don't have the right sources to ask those questions.
Oh no, they do. But those sources are not promoted. They are hidden, and they put forward this scandalous, emotion-driven BS, which like people read this garbage, which is Gulag Archipelago. Oh my God, they killed 60 million or whatever. Dudes, it's fiction. Even written in the book. It's fictional literature.
But Andrei, but that's the image of Stalin that exists, and millions of people think like that. And who was it, Goebbels or Goering, who said, if you repeat a lie long enough,
Goebbels.
Okay, it becomes the truth. So they did this intentionally. They repeat this lie over and over. So this has to be debunked. Like, you have to debunk all of this.
Yeah, I write books on that all the time.
I mean, like, I have to keep on digging, asking questions, because, you know, I grow up at school. That's what we learn, right? It doesn't matter. Soviet army helped, and, you know, World War II ended and victory. I mean, I also question, because this denazification has not really happened then. They just, you know, escaped to Argentina and Canada.
Red trails, they just went to Argentina, settled in Britain, Canada,
Switzerland, Israel.
United States, United States Army. It's fighting doctrine. It's all things about United States Army. It was essentially created by the Wehrmacht officers. And there are a bunch of people from military academies in the United States. Yeah,
you're so right. Like the same, like with NASA, the same like with CIA, all of this.
Yeah. It's like, and then you look at this and why they lose. Well, you started following the guys who lost. What do you expect? But obviously those Wehrmacht guys and SS guys, no less, they stated, oh no, we were so good. It was Hitler who failed. No, it wasn't Hitler who failed. But the point is, now when you have this thing and you follow it, and you recognize that, good Lord, you have been basically sold the pile of the, you know, bovine excrement. How do you recover from this? You can't. The West, Europe is done. You know, that's the thing. They went where nobody should have gone. It's like, Russians have this proverb, this, and I'll have to go in 3 minutes, that once every century, the combined West gets together, goes to Russia to have its own ass handed to it by Russians, and go back and recover. And so they repeat it. And so this time they cannot repeat it. You know why? Because Russia will turn Europe in the parking lot in 20 minutes if it comes down to it. This wasn't possible before. Now they are dealing with the nuclear superpower and with the best army in the world, conventional. The whole combined NATO armies cannot fight it. They will lose badly. So, let them kind of.
Andrei, I feel guilty for keeping you so long. I am immensely grateful for your time. Really. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. Andrei is the best. До свидания.
Bye.